Assalamu alaikum. How's everybody doing? Give me a thumbs up. If you can hear me, if you're doing well, if you're here. Okay, great. So my name is Fatma, and I'm one of the panelists today. I will also be the moderator for today's session. First and foremost, I want to applaud MCC's team for this initiative. We all know that sometimes it could be challenging and overwhelming to make decisions regarding your career path. And this is a great opportunity for you all to be here and be talking to some seasoned professionals who can give you firsthand information of the industry and help you, plan your future, inshallah. Second, I want to express my gratitude to the panelists for taking the time on a Sunday morning and come here and talk to us. On that note, I welcome all of you to today's session. I will give you a quick rundown of the program today. We will start out with the dua, and then we will go to each of the panelists one at a time. After all the professionals have talked, we will open the floor for Q&A, any comments or questions or discussions that you guys may have. I encourage you all to use the raise your hand feature or type your comments and questions in the chat box and we will address them, inshallah. If you are not talking, please keep your mic muted. And if you are attending the session, I will encourage you all to turn your cameras on so that way we know who we are speaking with. Also, in the professional world, you must have the confidence to look in the eye and speak and get your message across. So it's good practice. Practice with us, turn your cameras on, and let's get this session started, inshallah. I'm looking forward to an informative and productive session. Does anybody have any questions at this point before I move forward? Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite Brother Ammar to open the session with the dua, please.
Thank you, Sister Fatma. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen. Allahumma la tada' lana dhanban illa ghafartah, wa la hamman illa farrajtah, wa la daynan illa qadaytah, wa la maridan illa shafaytah, ولا مبتلا إلا عافيته ولا عسيرا إلا يسرته اللهم لا تفرق جمعنا هذا إلا بذنب مغفور وسعي مشكور وعمل صالح متقبل مبرور برحمتك يا عزيز يا غفور. O Allah, we ask you not to leave any sin of ours except that you forgive it, or any distress, but you relieve it, or any debt, but you settle it, or any illness, but you cure it, or any affliction, but you lift it, or any difficulty, but you ease it. O Allah, do not separate this gathering of ours, but with forgiven sins and an appreciated striving and rituals, accepted and blessed good deeds. By your mercy, O the Almighty One, O the Forgiven One. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Turn it back to you, Sister Fatma.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Brother Ammar. As you can see, the agenda for today is that we are going to cover certain topics that are relevant to the session. We'll try to cover and explain to you what is biotechnology field, what does a biotech professional actually do. We'll have the speakers share their professional career path and how they became biotech and how they are where they are at today. And then inshallah, we'll open the floor for question and answer. With that, let's move on to our first panelist, inshallah. Next slide, Brother Mobeen. Okay, so Brother Ammar, who's graciously just made the excellent dua for us, he's going to be our first speaker today. Brother Ammar is the Vice President of Global Market Access at Alumni. which is a medical technology company with the mission of enhancing human health by unlocking the power of the genome. He has worked with pharma and biopharma as well for more than 20 years in 6 different countries, mashallah. He's a pharmacist by training. On to you, Brother Ammar. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Sister Fatma. It's an honor and a pleasure being with this panel here today, and with many of you who are either at your school years or you're already in your fields of study at different colleges. And what I'm going to be sharing is not meant to be in any way or shape the blueprint for any of you. These are just, in a way, ideas, thought-provoking ideas of how you can manage your career. Let me start by saying initially, what could be the different biotech fields, or who are the players within the biotech industry? And this has significantly evolved over the past decade, I would say. For me, I started within the pharma industry, and the pharma industry in the past used to rely heavily on traditional drugs, like primary care products, things like antibiotics, anti-infectives, things like cholesterol-lowering medications, blood pressure drugs, and all of those things. And over time, the industry moved into what's called the biopharma. We have seen many companies like Pfizer, Bristol Myers Squibb, and many others are moving to be biopharma companies, which in a way, their focus has started to be on what's called specialty drugs like oncology, autoimmune disease, and many others. And so the industry itself has evolved. There are also here in San Diego, as you could imagine, there are many startups who are biotechs. And those startups, usually they are in a research mode yet. Very few of them, they commercialize drugs. And so in San Diego here, the opportunities available are mainly within the research field, but some of them over time are transitioning into commercialization. And we have seen a growth in those number of companies that are moving into commercialization stage here in San Diego, which is very good news for the community here in San Diego. There is the other field, which is the medical technology. So I worked in pharma industry, biopharma, in biotech as well, and then the medical technology, which is a company like Alumni, and there are also medical device companies in the field. Over the past few years, we have seen also an exploding number of companies who are working in information technology related to healthcare, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. So the field has really exploded, and you have many options today that did not probably exist when we started our career, or when I started my career probably more than 20, 25 years ago. My career path, I started in very small countries. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I decided not to practice pharmacy and move into the pharma industry to work on the business side of things. And I started in small markets, and then I moved to larger markets over time and more responsibilities. And I'll talk about this in a minute. But one thing you should keep in mind is that early in your career, or when going into the biotechnology field, you need to prove yourself, and you need to find the area where you can prove yourself to be really unique, successful, and so on. And then from there, you can evolve and develop. One thing to keep in mind is that as you move in your career, which is something I did myself, moving from one position to the other, especially when it is associated with extra responsibilities, it's very important to keep in mind two things. What can I add to the new job that I'm moving to? And what can I learn from that new job that I'm moving to? The thing about this equation is that you do not need this equation to be skewed in one way or the other, because if it is skewed in a way whereby it's more learning than what you could add to the job. It might take you a while to show your value to the company. And if it is something that you know what to do about it, you're adding a lot of value, but you're learning little in that job, it becomes boring over time. One thing that is very important when we talk about the business part of the biotechnology industry, which is where I probably practiced all my career, not on the research side, but on the business side, is that today you could do still the work that is needed in research and so on, and augment that with an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, that will enable you to go in the business side if you find you are interested in that. Or if you're doing a biology major and so on, you could still think about doing a Master in Business Administration that will enable you to move to the business part of the field over time. The move, of course, from local to global and regional in your career is definitely enriching in terms of expertise. However, there are pros and cons for working within a research job or working with a business within a business type of environment. And those pros and cons could be very significant, and it's a personal choice. The first thing to know is that one of the pros of working within the business part of any biotech industry is that you will have opportunity to look at different positions within the company, and that's very important. You will have the opportunity to be developed within the company. You will have the opportunity also to explore the globe, whereby I live personally in 6 different countries. But in addition to that, the pros probably of the business part of the biotech is that usually it is high rewards, high risk type of environment. And that's very important. That leads into the cons, because on the cons part of it, it is definitely the risk associated with it. And we know that over time, companies tend to reorganize, and usually the business functions go first. And this is why there will be risks associated with working within the business environment. The other thing is that you will find always more politics included or more politics within the business environment more than probably the research environment. I could be mistaken because I do not work in the research environment, but there are a lot of politics involved in the business part. In addition, moving like what I did between the different countries, there is a family aspect to that, is that you need your family to be aligned with you, that you can move from one country to the other. At one stage, we moved to France and we did not speak French, and we had to learn how to speak French. It was definitely a great experience. On the other hand, as we know about France today, it's not a country that could be considered as extremely friendly for Muslims, especially if one of your family members wears hijab, which is like the case with my wife, for example. So there are pros and cons associated with moving in your jobs between the different countries, and some of the rewards and risks associated with that. Let me probably recap with 2 things around recipe for success in your study and career, and then I'll talk quickly about opportunities at Alumni. One of the things that you should keep in mind is that as you go into your career, it's important to realize that your career is your responsibility. You could seek advice from mentors. You could seek advice from friends, from colleagues, everything, but it's your decision. And based on that, don't expect anybody to probably, yes, people might help, but don't expect or rely on anybody to advance you in your career or put you on the right track. You should be considering all options, and based on that, work your way as you move in your career. The second thing, which is related to that about your career, is your responsibility, is what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said: "Aqilha wa tawakkal." Tie it, untie it, tie it, and then depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything else. And that's a rule in your career. That's a rule. You cannot probably succeed without it. Don't take anything for granted. You need to do your homework. You need to be responsible. You need to make sure that no single stone is left unturned. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you definitely the guidance to move forward in your career and in your life. Finally, I will touch on Illumina quickly. There is an internship program at Illumina called I Aspire. It's a very good program. I think the interviews start towards the end of the summer. They make decisions by November of every year for the year to follow. And these are usually summer internships. The other thing to know about this, which you can just Google I Aspire Illumina, usually they prefer to have those who are seniors in their studies because the I Aspire program at Illumina is a way by which people can then be recruited at Illumina, which I believe many other companies, they do the same thing. So I would advise you to look at that and see if there is something that suits you, because there are a list of opportunities that go from the business side to the research side as well within Illumina. With that, I'll stop here and turn it back to Sister Fatma for the rest of the program. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Ammar. That was definitely very insightful and informative. Definitely agree that, in the beginning years of your career, you need to spend time to find your niche, move around as much as possible, try to gain as much experience as you can, because you can start out thinking that you're interested in one thing, and then the more exposure you get, the more experience you gain, the more you realize that, oh, I thought I wanted to be a scientist, but I actually like doing regulatory work. So it's all about finding your niche, finding that perfect place, that sweet spot that suits you, and that where you think that you're getting fulfillment as well as you're having fun. Because if you're not having fun at work, it can become a chore, and nobody likes doing chores. Definitely another point that Brother Ammar touched, tie your camel, do your research. Don't let things overwhelm you, but start reading up, start, going on LinkedIn, get familiar with the companies, see what kind of work they're doing. You sort of need to prime yourself. And the more you're primed, the more you're familiar and aware with what the companies have to offer, the better you can shape and design your future and decide what courses you want to study when you enter college or your senior year. Jazakallah khair, Brother Ammar. Let's move on to our next speaker, which is me. I'll just introduce myself quickly. I work as a senior scientist at Sekisui Diagnostics, which is part of Sekisui Chemical Company Limited. I'm actually the technical lead on point of care IVD. Again, go on LinkedIn and do your research, find out what all of those letters mean. You'll understand it. I'm a part of the R&D group. In my current position, I'm working on product development for COVID-19 test devices. 2 of those devices will be launched in the next 2 months, and then 2 others we're planning to launch later this year. Next slide, please. So biotech, let's talk about what biotech is. So as the name tells you, biotech is actually a middle point between science and technology. You combine science with technology to provide intelligent solutions for healthcare. We may be a completely different industry, but at the root of it, we are working to enhance healthcare. If you find that you have a knack for science and you like problem solving and you have a curious mind, then biotech is definitely for you. Diagnostics versus therapeutics, those are the main 2 branches of biotech. And then within those branches, there are multiple offshoots, but the main differentiation is diagnostics and therapeutics. I work in diagnostics. The main difference is that diagnostics, you basically work on, tools, devices, solutions to diagnose a disease, versus in the therapeutics branch, you work on tools, solutions, devices to cure that disease. So a good example would be devices that you use to, let's say, test if somebody has diabetes, for example. That would be a diagnostics branch. And then how do you cure diabetes? Or let's say, like antibiotics for bacterial diseases, that will fall into therapeutics, and everything that encompasses those branches. I touched on why you should choose biotech. Again, if you have a curious mind, you like finding solutions to problems, you are analytical, you enjoy science, and you want to see science in its practical form. And most importantly, you want to help people and you want to improve healthcare. That is
I got into the Zoom meeting.
welcome. But if you could mute yourself, please. So moving on, a quick touch on education. I would say, like, when people talk about biotech, they're talking about, definitely there's no substitute for higher education, but at the same time, do not underestimate the power of a 4-year degree from a premier institute. Having said that, research the schools that are offering or that are known for the courses that you're interested in. For example, in San Diego, UCSD is a great school. And if you can get into UCSD, or if you're aspiring to get into UCSD, look at their courses, look at what majors they have to offer to you, plan, and then work along those lines. Once you are at UCSD, take advantage of the BSMS program. It's super underrated. Not many kids know about that program, but while you're doing your BS in the second year around in your, even I think by the time you hit your junior year, you can start talking to your career advisors and they can recommend you. You can enroll in a joint BSMS program where you stay another just 1 extra year, you come out with a master's degree. And voila, you have an MS without having to go back to school later on. Try to get a specialized degree if you're interested in biotech. And by that, I mean, go for either microbiology or biochemistry, or, instead of general biology. General biology is usually more popular and more relevant for kids who are looking to go to med school, versus if you are interested in biotech, then you want to have a little more variety in your degree. Select a couple other interesting classes. For example, like look into bioinformatics, get a course in bioinformatics, do some lab courses. That way you'll have the exposure and you'll have, some understanding whether or not that is the work that you want to do. Because as much as you want to progress and get to a certain point in your career, everybody starts out at the bench. You have to be in the lab in the beginning. Like Brother Amar said, you have to prove yourself. How do you prove yourself that you're analytical? You will have to analyze data. How do you analyze data? You will have to run experiments. For that, you will have to be in the lab. So if that is something that you enjoy, you will find out while you're taking the class. Some kids, they take the classes, they go in the lab and they're like, nope, I like just crunching numbers. So they switch majors. So that would be a good time for you to figure things out and, to plan, to have a little more control over the plan. Another subject that is very important that you should definitely take if you're aspiring to go into biotech is statistics. It's, again, very underrated, but highly useful, and you use it pretty much on a daily basis. There's a lot of emphasis on calculus. By the raise of hand, how many of you use calculus in your labs? Yeah, how many of you use statistics? Exactly. So definitely get an idea of statistics, understand, the basics of it, get lab experience, and then moving on to navigating the industry. So that, again, falls into finding your niche. You don't just, the first step is to enter, to get your foot in the door. Now you've gotten your job, but that's not the end of it. That is just the beginning of it, because then the options, the possibilities are unlimited. Again, like every company, most companies, they allow people to move around. They promote career development. So if you started out as a research associate or as an associate scientist, but then soon you found that you find yourself more interested in regulatory job, or you find yourself more interested in the business aspect of it, look into it, try to collaborate with other teams, get permission from your manager, have your one-on-ones with them, and see that, you know, they are on the same page. And most of the times managers, they like to help kids out with their career development. There's always that mentor-mentee relationship. That's pretty much what we do. That's how we, each of us, have progressed in our career. That's just the way the industry works. So take advantage of, you know, those little tips that you learn along the way. Don't feel that you got a job and now you have to stay in this job for the rest of your life. So try to move around, try to explore, try to find your niche, see what you're good at and see what you enjoy doing. Lots of pros. It's an interesting work. I find it extremely stimulating. If I go back and if I think, is there something else I could have done in school? I don't think so. But that's, again, my personal bias. I just love science and I'm an analytical person. I like to think, I like to, you know, figure things out, come to solutions. So I knew that that was for me. So that's the pros. Again, if you're a curious mind, if you know, like if you know how things work, if you want to look into the machines, and if you want to come up with innovative ideas. Cons. I think the one major con that I would talk about, or that I want to cover, is the salary aspect of biotech. It is saturated, so there's not a lot of growth in certain branches. Also, the starting salary might be slightly under compared to some of the other industries. If you're comparing yourself with, you know, software engineers, then yes, you will find that you'll be paid a little under them. But know that with hard work and with, you know, skills, over time, we all catch up and everybody pretty much comes to the same level. So yeah, while in the beginning, you may find that there are some discrepancy, some disparity, eventually everybody gets to a point where they're pretty satisfied. So I think that's pretty much all that I have to cover. Without taking much time, I will now move on to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Sister Iman Jilani. She's a Senior Director and Head of Oncology Clinical Assay Group in Translational Oncology at Pfizer. She's a graduate of Chicago Medical School Health Sciences Clinical Lab Science and UTMD Anderson Cancer Center. She's also an American Society of Clinical Pathologists certified for medical technology. Without further ado, I'll let Sister Iman take the floor.
Thank you. Thanks, Sister Fatma, and welcome everybody. Go back. There we go. So just wanted to kind of let you know how I actually got to that position. And my story is a little bit different than Brother Ammar, because he actually did the opposite of what I did. I started with the biotech and then went into pharma. So just to kind of let you know, I did do my bachelor's in medical technology, and I'm MTASCP certified. And I loved medical technology because it included hematology, immunology, biochemistry, almost every single field in the science, and was during my rotations for the medical technology program, which is equivalent to a CLS program here in California. I really loved flow cytometry. I liked oncology, and I stuck with MD Anderson, kind of became an expert with flow cytometry and hematopathology. So after that, I did my master's in Chicago Medical School in clinical lab science, concentrating more on the flow cytometry and hematopathology field. Then did cancer biology with UTMD Anderson. After that, I went ahead and started working in biotech. I worked at Quest Diagnostics after MD Anderson, and I headed up actually the hematopathology lab over there. I was the scientific director of the hematopathology lab. As you remember, you start off small. The salaries initially are not really that high, but the more experience you have and the more you get into what you like, the more opportunities you get, and the salaries actually catch up to most of the other fields and even more. I then went to Pharma. So I went to work at Pfizer about 12 years ago. The career levels between the biotech versus pharma is different. So in the biotech, let's say I was the scientific director, but when I went to pharma, it was a manager position. It wasn't actually a scientific director at that time, but the salary was pretty much the same, even more. So there's a big difference between the titles and the salaries between pharma and biotech. So, so if you get a job like within pharma, but you feel that the title is lower, don't worry about it. The title is not everything within pharma or within the biotechnology world. So I've been over there for about 12 years. I head up the oncology clinical assay group within the translational oncology department. And what we do is basically very unique. It actually combines the business, the science, and the technology at the same time. So my group is a little bit unique. We have several people that are with various degrees. I have at least 5 PhDs, several MS programs, and several BS degrees. And they have to have at least 5 years of experience within my team. We build them if they have 5 years of experience within the certain field that we're looking for. We usually hire them and kind of build them up in order to kind of get to where they need to be. In this field, we have several people that have various levels of expertise of either molecular assays. We have quite a bit of NGS expertise, flow cytometry, ligand binding assays, but not as much because most of our ligand binding assays are covered by the clinical assay group, which is not in our team. And then we have also, a lot of IHC. So there's various technologies that are involved in there, but our team also is not just involved in those technologies. They are overseeing the validations for the biomarkers within the oncology, and also the outsourcing of these biomarkers into the CROs. So they have to have the business aspect of it too. And each person is covering basically like clinical trials from the beginning to the end for the biomarkers. From the after the biomarker strategy is set, they take on the biomarkers. They decide which vendor they're going to be utilizing, which technology, what type of validation is needed, and then implementation into the clinical trial. This field, I really love it because it's never a dull moment. You have to be up to date with all the technologies. So, if there's new technologies with NGS, if it's new technologies for IHC, you have to kind of be up to date with it. So it's never a dull moment. You're always learning something new. It's not like something that you're doing on a regular basis. It's not the same thing that you're doing day in, day out. This is why it's really, I enjoy going to work. I'm always learning something new. And as Brother Ammar said, in the positions that you take, you really need to have a way of learning things, plus also contributing. And this is why I found my niche in that area. And, I've been there for almost 12 years, even though, I've been progressing through those 12 years and had several promotions and having bigger group and also including non-oncology field. It's never a dull moment. It's just been the highlight of my life. So just to give you some pros and cons of being in pharma. So as I said, science, technology, and innovation, you have to keep up to date with the science, technology, and innovation. It's never a dull moment, so this is a pro. The culture and environment. So in big pharma, especially at Pfizer, you work in teams. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of teamwork. And the culture is we all rely on each other, and we trust each other. It's a very family-like oriented, even though in smaller pharma, it's usually, they say it's more family-oriented, but I can tell you within Pfizer, especially within oncology, everybody works together coherently. They work together with different departments very well. And the culture, especially now, Pfizer is really adamant about having a cohesive culture with diversity, with equity, and also making sure that everybody is treated fairly. Regarding job security, so there's pros and cons within pharma. It depends on where you're at in the clinical field and in the biotech field, or within the biomarker field. I can tell you, if you're in clinical trials, it's been very stable. I've been there for 12 years. There hasn't been any layoffs in my department per se. But if you're in the research area, so if you're in the lab, or if you're in a certain research area, it hasn't been as stable within WRD. There has been some layoffs, so there's give and take. But within the clinical trial arena, or if you support clinical trials, it's been very stable. So you know, if you're in the research field, it's not always very stable. They lay off quite a bit, but at the same time, and there's several reorgs, but at the same time, you can always find other jobs in different departments within the same company. So most of the time, you're not going to be left out, but at the same time, when there's big layoffs, a lot of times, you know, you lose your job. So there's give and take within when you work at pharma. For salary and benefits, as I explained before, the salaries within pharma are much higher, I think, than biotech from my experience. Benefits are also much higher, especially the higher your level, the more benefits you get from long-term incentives, from the actual salary itself, from bonuses. I can tell you in the past, this year we had almost 200% bonus instead of getting 100%. And I haven't seen any year for the past 5 years that we have less than 100% of our bonus. So benefits are pretty good. There's retirement options that are really good. So most of the time within pharma, the benefits are better than biotech. Publications, I can tell you it's a little bit harder to publish within pharma companies. I know I used to be very active in publications when I was at MD Anderson. It was publish or perish, and we published like crazy when I was at MD Anderson. But I can tell you, when I got to Pfizer, it's very difficult to publish anything. We can do some presentations, but we have to have very high level approvals, because they're all related to clinical trials, and they're very protective to the information that comes out from clinical trials. So, so if you're looking for expansion in your publications, then don't look into the pharma company. Doesn't mean that you still can't publish. You can, but it's not as easy. Opportunities of advancement, I have to say, within Pfizer, there's so many different ways you can advance if you have a biotechnology degree, you know, from working in the labs, from heading the labs, to going more into, let's say, regulatory. You could go into even non-MD clinicians. We have a lot of actually biotech people that are doing non-MD clinicians within clinical trials, as long as you have enough expertise within a certain field. You can also go into the business operations, where you can actually do just mainly outsourcing and do mainly business development type deals. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually advance within a pharma. It doesn't have to be in labs or just supporting biomarkers. Okay. Now, for colleges around San Diego, I can tell you my nephew went to Cal State San Marcos, and they have a really good biotechnology program. It's actually the courses that he took are very relevant to what we do and especially what I do in my department. They concentrate on biostatistics, they concentrate on even business development. They have several classes for business development. They concentrate quite a bit on the science from molecular to they had a lot of immunology, microbiology, so on and so forth. So it's a really strong program if anybody is interested in going there. They do have also scholarships that are available over there, and I can tell you he got a scholarship even though he's an international student. So if you have about a 3.5 GPA or above, you can easily get a scholarship in Cal State if you're interested there. There's several actually internship programs that are available. Peprotech has actually opportunity, and it's actually funded by several pharma and biotech companies where they provide grants or scholarships to diversity groups. So this is something to think about. Since most of you guys are minorities, you have a big chance to get that. It was a $40,000 last year, and they have this every year. We also have a Pfizer Summer Student Worker Program. They do this every year. You can apply in February, March timeframe. And then the interviews happen usually in end of March and April, and they start sometime in June for the summer. And they give actually pretty good salary for the students that are doing the internship. And it actually guarantees you that you're going to do this every year. You can start doing this from your senior high school year to the end of your college year. So you're not eligible unless you're senior and you're entering college next year. And then anytime during college years, as long as you're in the biology field or medical field, then you can go ahead and apply for it. Let's see. And I think that's basically it on my end. One thing I wanted to also say, I have to say, I didn't think, I wasn't wearing my hijab when I first started my career. And when I was in Pfizer and heading a department, I lost my brother. He was a shaheed in Palestine. And I decided I've always wanted to wear my hijab, but I always was thinking about my career and what's going to happen with my career. But I can tell you, I wore the hijab at that time, and everybody actually respected me a lot more. And it actually gave me more opportunities to advance, if you think about it. So I just wanted to let the ladies know that, don't be shy about wearing your hijab, and don't be scared about being yourself.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Iman. Definitely very encouraging to hear that, the last bit especially. It was very insightful and very informative. And any of the participants, I will encourage you, if you have any questions, Sister Iman used a lot of terms like NGS, IHC that you may not understand what that means. Feel free to reach out and ask questions, type your questions in the comment section, and inshallah, we'll help you out. We'll, elaborate more on that and help you understand some things if they didn't make sense to you. Moving on to the next speaker. We have Sana Sirajuddin. Sana is a director of process science and engineering at Instil Bio, a clinical stage cell therapy company developing tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, TIL, for the treatment of cancer. She has worked in cellular therapies for the last 5 years at Kite Pharma, where she used chimeric antigen receptors, or CAR, and T-cell receptors, or TCR, to treat blood cancer. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I don't think I have a slide, but do you want me to speak? Sorry?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
I know that I also want to make sure that everyone has time, so I'll just go over maybe like a shorter period and just hit on some points that other people have gone into. Also, I want to say thank you so much to Brother Amar, Sister Iman, and Fatima. Like, listening to your stories, I was like, I wish I knew these things before I went into biopharma. But alhamdulillah, it's good to validate what you're saying. Yeah, so I started off my career as a process engineer, and I actually did it in Kite, which is the biopharma where we're doing oncology. And specifically, we were working on blood cancers, and something you'll hear now, it's kind of the rave in a sense in the science field, is that we are working on leukemia and lymphoma, which are the blood cancers. And so when I was there, I was working primarily on lymphoma, which we became the second company to get commercial for Yescarta. So it was really exciting. Novartis beat us with the ALL. We were a little disappointed, but this is the startup life that I kind of jumped into early in my career. During that time, I also did tech transfers under what you'll hear as manufacturing science and technology. And what we did out there is our process that we had, which was clinical or commercial, was just Yescarta. We would transfer it to different countries. So I had the opportunity to travel to China and Netherlands, and currently now the UK, taking our process that we've our manufacturing process and transferring out there. So I've had all that experience, the cross-functional with the different teams, as everyone was saying. It's very collaborative, and going through that process. I think, one thing, and again, everyone's really covered a lot of good points. I think one thing that I really wish that I had known, and I had a very active MSA and math background, was that, again, there is politics, and there's also politics within the process development and the research area. And really, I feel like the work, regardless of what the work is, that's actually the easiest part of any job. And it's really the people that you're dealing with that becomes a little bit harder, because we have this Islamic training. So we have these like expectations and this level of behavior. Whereas when you're going into the field, you're now introduced to a wide variety of different individuals, and they also have their development goals that they have to develop in, obviously. And so, coming from like this very family-oriented background, I sometimes found it a little difficult to have to deal with like new situations, because there is competition within the field. You have to expect it. And some people aren't happy if they see you get promoted, and you also have to accept those type of aspects. But one thing you'll need to learn early on is to really gain a thick skin in this industry. And I think also something that I faced when I was going in was something called imposter syndrome, right? You're like in this new field, and you sometimes you don't think that you deserve to be in this field, or you're good enough for that field. So really making sure that you yourself, like your biggest limitation will be yourself. And I think that's important. And that goes even for like college, high school, like anything. You just watch. The person who's going to limit you is you. And I think that's important to just remember, is that you really have to, like, for example, when I was in college, I always used to just try whatever I could. If I got it, like, alhamdulillah. If I didn't, okay, you know what, at least I tried. So like during college, I did undergrad research. I didn't get paid for it, but I did it anyways because it was something that I was interested in, right? So really, you can just email professors and say, hey, I'm interested in this field. Would you be willing to allow me to work in your department? And you have to be willing to be unpaid. It's okay. Inshallah, it will make a difference later on in your life when you're going into it. The other part that I did, after college, I didn't get a job. And I think that's important sometimes that people need to understand. I did chemical engineering, and it was a recession, and there were a few things that I had to deal with on a personal level, but I didn't get a job. So then I did some project management work. Alhamdulillah, I had like maths to support me. So I was working for them for a year, but then I kind of missed the science field. So I did go into my master's program, which I did at Keck Graduate. That's where I did get a background in both process and also business. And that was actually a stepping stone for me, because that's where I met people who were in the industry, and actually they're the ones who were like, hey, we have these type of job offers. So there was that route that I took on that level. And alhamdulillah, I got this job at time Kite Pharma. And I'm not someone who's willing to just accept a job. So for me, it had to be something that was something that I wanted to go into. So that was the route that I had to take. It took like 2 years before I got that job after college. So it's okay if those things happen to you, as long as you keep trying. But I was also still doing research unpaid at UCSD for several months afterwards. So, just have those type of expectations and really just go for it regardless of what happens. And I can't stress enough, try to just get the experience, like internships, if you can, because that's really going to put you above other people. And again, like everything else that's been covered, I think mashallah is great. And so I'm not going to go into those as well. So I'll just end it there.
Thank you, Sana. Definitely the imposter syndrome part was very relatable. I think I personally went through that. You're always, in the beginning, especially, you're always second guessing yourself. Should I express my idea? Should I tell them that I think this is the better way to do it? But no, but he's a senior manager. He should know better than me. Turns out your idea was all the way more effective and, more intelligent. And now like your manager is talking about it in the boardroom and you're like, that was my idea. Okay.
Yeah, or they say the same idea that you said before.
Yeah. But you're outside the boardroom, they're inside the boardroom in the beginning. So yeah, it's just part of the process. I'm sure it's not specific to our industry that happens, that's just the corporate culture and certain experiences that, we all have to go through. The networking aspect, again, we don't emphasize this enough, but networking, getting a job is knowing the right people, being in the right place at the right time. You may have all the skills, but if your resume doesn't stand out to them for whatever reason, it's going to get, somewhere in the pile for like the next decade. So yeah, like try to get as much networking, make connections. Even if you're in high school right now, start talking to people, start getting familiar with the industry as much as you can. So very practical tips, Sana. Love it.
A few more things that you just reminded me. Just another thing is, as you're progressing in your career, you become very technical in the beginning, but then that technicality actually decreases, and then you're more project management and more strategic. So I'm kind of in that quasi role where, alhamdulillah, I just got this director position, and so I have to remove myself from being too technical and becoming more people management focused, and also strategic focus. So going through that process. And the other part is, I did wear my hijab throughout my career. So I think when, as Muslim women, you sometimes do have a stigma. I do remember one of my managers kind of said things, a few individuals did say things to me, but I never took it to heart. To me, I saw that as an opportunity to educate them. And just keeping that in mind is that you will be introduced to people who don't know Islam. Like they thought I was a Hindu, believing in multiple gods. I'm like, no, that's Hinduism. This is like Islam. We believe in one God, etc. So it does also become that opportunity to give that dawah.
I'm just going to share a quick story along those lines. We had a major launch and we were all sitting in the conference room, and they opened a bottle of champagne and they passed a glass to me, which I passed on to the next person. So I did that a few times. And then this was my second or third year at that company. And then one of the scientists was like, are you not 21? Why are you not drinking? And I was like, let me teach you a little bit about myself. So yes, definitely dawa opportunity left and right, because not many Muslims in biotech, that's for sure. Excellent. Inshallah, moving on to our next speaker. If you can give me the next slide, please. So our next speaker is Brother Vasavora. Vasavora is a regulatory affairs manager at Alumni. Vasav has over 10 years of experience in regulatory affairs for medical devices and diagnostics and has a master's degree in biomedical engineering from USC. In his current role, Vasav is responsible for obtaining marketing authorizations from regulatory agencies like FDA, EU notified bodies, etc., for medical devices and in vitro diagnostics. Brother Vasav, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. If you can please go on to the next slide. Yeah, so it's an honor for me being here and being able to share my perspective on this field of regulatory affairs. And hopefully the information I have to share today would help you evaluate this field as one of the several different options you have within the field of biotechnology in general. So, I mean, talking about medical products, be it drugs, devices, biologics, I mean, they have a great potential to alleviate human suffering, but if they don't work as intended, they can also cause significant harm. So we have governments and health agencies all over the world that they have come up with laws and regulations to safeguard public health, to make sure that when these devices or products are used, they work as intended, they're safe. And those laws and regulations, they're written to be fairly broad, widely applicable to a variety of different products and technologies, medical products in particular. And what regulatory affairs professionals do is help the companies who make those products comply with these laws and regulations. So what this is the primary role, and our job within the companies is to educate the different functions within a company on those laws and regulations and help make sure that the products that are made are safe and effective. And we act as a liaison with different regulatory agencies as we develop, market different products. So why I decided to go into regulatory affairs? So I, as Sister Fatma mentioned, I have a background in biomedical engineering. What I found in that being trained in biomedical engineering was that area of biomedical engineering itself it's comprised of different specializations. So for example, medical imaging or biomechanics, neural engineering. So there are different fields where you can specialize yourself. But I wanted to I wanted to be a generalist as opposed to be a specialist. And I didn't want to commit myself to a specific field within biomedical engineering. And regulatory affairs, it meant to me that me with my scientific background, I can work in a variety of different companies, and regardless of what specialization those companies are relating to. So it allows me the diversity of products that I can work on. That was the appeal for me at the time. So what do I love about my job in regulatory affairs? So as you develop the products, the laws and regulations are fairly wide, and they apply to different aspects of product development, starting from research and development, clinical trials. Then once you have the products on the market, you have to make sure that you are complying with laws and regulations, like you are not overselling your product and not over promising your users that this can do X, Y, and Z while you only have evidence for the product doing X and Y. So I, on a daily basis, interact with a variety of people within the company with different functions, and it's sort of there's a lot of interaction with people on a daily basis. And I do like that aspect of close collaboration with different functions which my job offers in regulatory affairs. So pros and cons of becoming a regulatory affairs professional. The biggest pro that I can see of is being able to closely work with a variety of people. And I'm close enough to science, I would say, but I'm not that close that I'm, very much focused on a single aspect of a product or a technology. I don't have to do lab work, but at the same time, I'm expected to look at data, information, scientific information, and make sense of it. So I'm at a comfortable distance, in my opinion, from science, just being in regulatory affairs. Um, so that I see it as a pros, and also like the salary aspect, as a lot of other folks have pointed out, like when you start off your career in biotech, you do see that the wages are not as much as a software developer, and so on. But in my opinion, the professional experience matters a lot in the field, in this field overall. So in regulatory affairs, I can at least attest to that once you land on a role in regulatory affairs and you are able to have two or three different roles, then you are highly valued in that field. I mean, for me personally, if you ask, I mean, I don't, in a week, at least 4 or 5 recruiters reach out to me for different roles, and it has been happening for years and years. And so there are, yes, there are educational programs and stuff that help you go into regulatory affairs, but the professional experience would matter a lot. And Khan says, I mean, you're not developing your product, so I think you are at some distance from science. You might not have an opportunity to do like direct research on products. So that's the con. If you had a mindset of doing research and stuff, this is far from research. So you are expected to understand the products, but you are not designing the products yourself. So that is a con, besides the salary aspect I mentioned. But beyond that, I couldn't think of any other con of this field. And things, people might find it very dry when they are initially starting their career. And certainly with products that are more simple, if the nature of applications is simple, in regulatory affairs, people would find it boring. But in innovative companies like Illumina, or products where there are breakthrough technologies, this job becomes much more interesting. The next slide. So educational background, if you have a good scientific background, like a degree in life sciences, I think, in my opinion, that is a good start. But having analytical skills, having a brief introduction in this field in terms of being familiar with laws and regulations that apply to medical products is useful. So having certifications, so for example, USC has a master's program in regulatory affairs. UCSD has a certificate program. SDSU has a certificate program in regulatory affairs. I think there is Northeastern University who have a master's program as well. So there are a bunch of certifications available that you can use as a jumpstart to having a good introduction in regulatory affairs. But eventually, if you can land on an internship, I think that would be much more helpful to get your first job in regulatory affairs. And yeah, beyond like professional, like trying to get internships, some professional experience, if you can get involved with institutions like SDRAN, there's a San Diego Regulatory Affairs Network. I mean, you can certainly learn a lot about this field in institutions like that. There is also Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, and they also offer a regulatory affairs certification. And that would help you a lot if you want to make a career in regulatory affairs. So I'll just end at that. I think we are over time, but we'll welcome any questions from this point on. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Wasif. Definitely want to attest to that. We do all the science, all the technical work, but none of that will matter if the regulatory team does not come back and tell us, you didn't do this correctly, you did this correctly. And then if they don't make it good enough for us to be able to submit it to the FDA. So it's definitely when we talk about technology, we only think about it from a science perspective. We don't realize how much work and how important this particular field is. And regulatory affairs, again, it's, there's immense opportunities pretty much in every company around here. Moving on, first, I want to thank all the speakers. Jazakallah khair. I hope that everybody who attended the session today, they learned and they now have a better idea about the industry. Yes, I agree, Sana's comment. Some of the questions that we got, what are the best core courses in high school you should take to become a biotechnologist? Since I already have the mic, I'll just quickly answer that and I'll open the floor to anybody else who would want to respond to that. Definitely, you need to do well in your physics, chemistry, math, science, and biology. I mean, math and biology. You cannot go into biotech if you do not do well in your STEM courses. So do pay attention to that. On top of it, do really well in math. Math helps out quite a bit in later stages. Anybody else wants to add any comment to best courses in high school?
So one thing my daughter was asking me regarding statistics and whether that would be beneficial for her because she wanted to take the calculus. And I said, definitely take statistics. This would be more practical for you than any other math that you take. So if you get the chance to do statistics, I would recommend you that you take it.
Yeah, and I would like to add, like, for biotech in general, like I came across some of the surveys done to like figure out what's most important and helpful in this career. And besides biostatistics, one of the things pointed out was biochemistry, like having the good understanding in biochemistry would be helpful.
I totally agree with that. It helped me quite a bit within my career.
I'm a third-year biology major, but interested in joining Illumina. Would it be beneficial to me if I applied?
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, there is an internship program at Illumina called I Aspire. Go ahead and check that. You can just Google I Aspire Illumina, and there is a formal application process. They usually make decisions between August and November every year. And then those interns will join the company in the summer after that. And it's a very well compensated program. Usually, as I said, they prefer to have those who are seniors in their field of study because this I Aspire program is considered a path to working within Illumina. So if you are chosen to be part of this internship program, you're almost 50% there. So it's a great program to look forward to.
Thank you, Brother Ammar. I'll first go to one of the live questions that we just got, and then I'll cover this last question on the slide. So what about quality assurance and compliance as a connector between regulatory and operations? How can one be prepared for roles in this line of work?
I can take that question. So a lot of biomedical engineering professionals, for I know, they end up being quality engineers. And so a good analytical background, and that could be based on having an engineering degree or any similar fields. I think that's a good start as far as having, so if it's a life science compared with a degree that offers you expertise in, I guess, analytical fields, such as having a good understanding in statistics, that certainly comes with it if you have an engineering degree. That is a good start, but beyond that, there are ASQ offered courses. ASQ is American Society of Quality, and they have a number of certifications that you can pursue. And one of them is a quality engineering certificate. When I was interested in quality a long time back, I did a certification in being a biomedical auditor, and that allowed me to have a good understanding of quality systems and regulations that govern quality systems. And what quality systems are those are sort of best practices that are expectations from regulatory agencies, that you're when you develop products, companies are expected to implement in their usual conduct of business, I would say. So start off, look into these ASQ offered certifications, and familiarize yourself in this field. I think that would be the best start. And there are certain certifications ASQ offers that don't require a lot of experience. So there are probably 7-8 different certifications. So you can start with something basic and build on.
So I'm going to take it from the different aspect from our quality assurance department. So we work actually very closely with the MQA, which is medical quality assurance, in order to kind of audit vendors and audit processes and making sure that we are following the regulatory requirements. So in that case, our quality assurance department actually is people that were in the biotech field and have quite a bit of regulatory information and experience. So you don't have to have certification per se to be in that field. You just need to have the appropriate experience with the appropriate regulatory requirements within that field.
Thank you. So the next question is, for the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, how have biotechnologists helped in finding the vaccine? Isn't it the biotechs who found the vaccine?
It is. It's actually BioNT that found it initially, if you're talking about the mRNA. I'm not in that department, but I can tell you our vaccine group, especially the biomarker group and also the clinical trial group, work together in order to get that vaccine up and going. So there's a big hand of biotechnology within that COVID-19 vaccine, from doing the NGS testing to doing the sequencing. NGS is next gen sequencing. To actually doing the blood test for the antibodies in order to make sure that people got immunized, to actually implementing the clinical trial. So several biotech people were involved in it. So it's a big field, but yes, definitely biotechnologists had a big role to do with it.
And I'll add to what Sister Iman has said with a fun fact, is that many people do not know that Moderna, for example, did not have to bring the virus on site to develop the vaccine. So yep. They sequenced the DNA of the vaccine using one of our Alumni's machine, and basically the virus was a file that was sent to Moderna, and they developed the vaccine. This has saved probably 3 to 4 months.
It did, and that's why actually the mRNA was much faster to develop than any other vaccine.
I was going to ask you, Brother Ammar, to speak more on the Moderna, because I know that Illumina was part of that, and also the next-gen sequencing. Illumina is all about NGS. So that is also something. Yeah, that is also something that if anybody is interested in, please feel free to reach out to Brother Ammar, Brother Vasif, or Sister Iman, and they can tell you all about NGS and how to get into that. But that's the thing of the future.
Yeah, it's a big field, yes, and definitely recommend everybody to take molecular.
Yeah, Yeah, and currently, a lot of the work that is going on using sequencing technology is looking for mutations, of course. And so there are so many countries around the world who have put already in place systems to track the new variants based on either analysis of all positive cases in some countries or just a fraction of those positive cases in other countries. In the US, we're still lagging behind, but we're catching up.
It's interesting how we are at the top of the list, but we're always just in the catch-up mode when it comes to healthcare. Go USA.
Yeah.
So if that, Brother Mubin, maybe you can let me know if this is all there is. If this is it, then I will again encourage everybody to, connect with all the panelists today. If you want, look us up on LinkedIn, reach out. Inshallah, we'll try to help you guys out as much as we can within our capacities. This was a great session. We definitely enjoyed being part of that, and inshallah hope that you all learned something and now you have somewhat better idea about what biotech is all about. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to come and talk finally. My name is Bayazid and my wife is Lamia, so don't take me wrong. So, so we are on vacation. We are in Idlewild, beautiful mountains, and my wife promised me not to touch anything that is related to her field, which is biotech. So I said, okay, I'm gonna be the one who's gonna be appearing on this Zoom meeting. So she's in the back, she's hearing everything, and she's the one who asked the questions. And she's appreciating everything. Thank you so much. It was very informative. I am an economist by training, and I so have nothing to do with this field. Just sometimes I hear my wife talking about this thing, and it's Chinese to me. So
Thank you.
Well, we're glad that we could help.
I understand.
So Sana just posted, for more information and a great resource for the biopharma industry is the Parental Drug Association, or the PDA. And then again, the FDA, MHRA, ICH, these are all some resources. So feel free to, research them, look into it. Again, we're here to help out in however way we can. Thank you all for taking the time, speakers as well as the attendees. This was a great session and hope we were of some help to you. And inshallah, we'll see you all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, sister. Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
feel free to reach out if you
you.
need anything.
And,
جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
جزاكم الله خيرا.
Wa iyyakum.